Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our video lecture series. Now, as we've discussed in the previous video, this is going to be your finale for the enemy. Now, I know there's a lot of pages still left and there's a lot of ground still left to be covered. So what I'm asking you to do is, if you still haven't done it by now, like if there is like 3 videos made yet, and if you still haven't finished reading the chapter on your own, then please do it right now. Okay, if you do it right now, then it'll be easier for me to explain. It'll be easier for me to speed up this process because, like I said, we've already waited quite a lot to finish this. I hope your background information about Japan and its culture is pretty solid by now. There's a few more conversations that I would like to have. Now, I said I was going to make this video an hour long. That's not going to happen. Because like Niharika's submission, like the video that you guys saw on YouTube and everything else, I got that done from my company. So I had to give like company time to get that video done. So now I have to give school time to get my company work done. And I can't make this video an hour long. I'm sorry, because I wanted that video to be cool, because like it took some time, because Niharika just sent me like the vocals. I did like the mixing and everything with my interns in my company, and then I asked them to make me a video, and then I uploaded it. Like they made the video, they made the channel, like my poor interns. So if you want to thank somebody for the video, you thank my interns. If you want to thank somebody for mixing the song, you can thank me, because like I'm the one who did the mixing. But congratulations, Niharika, like very well done. I'm very impressed like with the way you did. There's a lot of room for improvement as usual. I mean, everybody is not perfect. Like, I mean, if you were perfect, then you wouldn't be in my class. You would already be famous. So since you are in my class, we'll just focus on a little bit more. Like I said, I'll share some singing lessons with you all. For the rest of you, like this is an inspiration for the rest of you, because like if you are talented at something, then you should be doing it. And she was talented and she wanted to write and she did it. So if there was something you were interested in, you could have done it, but now the deadline is over. So by the time this video is uploading, I think I will have received Kavya's song or something as well. So Kavya, good job on working that on that as well. And I'll do like the video and like the processing and everything. If you haven't done it already, I'll do it for you guys. Don't worry about it. That's the benefit of working in a media house. You have like a bunch of first year interns who you can order around, which is what I did for Niharika's video. I asked my interns to make a video, lyric video for me, and then I mixed the song and then I sent it to them and they compiled it and put it up online last night. So that's why this video is not going to be an hour long, like, because I said like I use my company time to do school work, so now I'll have to do like company work in the school time, which is like this video. So anyways, like it might not be an hour long, but it's still going to be pretty long. So please finish the video, be ready for it and everything else. So there will be times where I will raise my book or something, like I'll do something weird in the middle of a video. Just like remember that, because I'm not doing cuts or anything. So I have to like keep markers and everything else. I have to like put keyframes basically. So this is like the low budget way of having that clipboard thing which you have on a movie site. So this is my low budget way of knowing like when I'm editing where to put in like markers, where are the keyframes and everything. So if you see me raise the book, or if you see me make a very obvious gesture in the video, it's because of when I'm going to edit it, it's going to be like easier for me to put everything together. Okay, so there's that. That's the intro basically. So where we were like he was gonna operate, like he was already starting to operate, and like the patient was losing blood. He had asked his wife to give the anesthesia, but his wife threw up because she wasn't used to blood and anything else. So now we'll be continuing on from here. So let's just say we are at page 34. All right, so we'll start from there. So once again, since this is going to be a long video, I'm not going to be reading out the entire pages. I'll just like point out some of the important stuff and then I'll explain it. I'm not going to be doing the entire reading because there's a lot of pages to cover and I need to get this done quickly and I need to upload this on time, because like the internet and electricity these days has just been horrible. Like, so I don't know if I finish recording this video, I'll be able to render it on time or upload it on time. So if I'm late, I'm sorry. So let's focus on page number 34. Just remember there's a signal for me to put something up on the screen apparently here. Okay, so he says, this man, there is no reason under heaven why he should live. Alright, so he's just talking about, you know, why there is no reason why he should live, means like he doesn't believe like that this man deserves his life to be saved because he is apparently the enemy. Right? And then Sadao says, groan, he muttered, groan if you like, I'm not doing this for my own pleasure. In fact, I do not know why I'm doing it. once again, like we can see throughout this entire story, this is like a recurring theme. Sadao grappling with these feelings of, like not hating the American, not finding any hatred in his heart for these people, even though like he had it in his heart when he went to America, even though he has like the superior idea of like the Japanese people being better than the American people, which was the common sentiment of the war at that time. So you can't blame him for that. But at the same time, like he's still helping this American, and this is why he's in such a confusing situation in his mind. He's not doing it for his pleasure. He's not trying to hurt the American. He's not torturing him. He's not giving him over, but he's still helping him, and he doesn't know why he's helping him. Okay, so it was Hannah and the anesthetic. This fellow is beginning to stir. So anesthetic at that time, like it might be chloroform. So chloroform, like in movies, they show you that chloroform. You put a rag over somebody's face and they just pass out in seconds. In reality, it's really different. If you were a zoology student or something, and then like you have to collect bugs and make them like pin them on slides and everything, the college will provide you with chloroform for doing those projects, and they will give you instructions on how to use it. If you're trying to like knock out a human being with chloroform, it's going to take a long time, and they will wake up after a little while. And if you mess up the doses just a little bit, like chloroform will kill you. Like it might cause irreversible brain damage and brain trauma and stuff like that. So like that whole movie thing where you hold a rag with chloroform over somebody's mouth and they pass out and you kidnap them, that doesn't really happen in real life. Chances are like you have to hold the rag in your mouth and they have to breathe in for like constantly for like 2 or 3 minutes, which is what he says to his wife, like hold a cotton ball dipped in anesthetic near his nose, and if you feel like he's starting to breathe heavy or breathe difficulty, you move the cotton ball away, and which is what actually happens with real chloroform in real life. As long as you have like that mask in front of your face, and in the olden days, I'll try to find a picture or a footage or something that shows you like old school anesthesiologists doing like chloroform anesthesia and stuff like that. If I can find it, I'll put it up here. But basically that was it. There was a mask and there would be like a long pipe connected to it where there would be like a cotton absorbent pad on the other end. So you would put on the mask on the face of the patient and you would drop like a 3-4 drops of chloroform into like the absorbent part, and then like they would breathe in the chloroform fumes and they would go out. And then the anesthesiologist would monitor the breathing and heart rate, and like if it felt like the heart rate or breathing was coming up, that means they were regaining consciousness. They would drop like 1 or 2 drops more in the absorbent section, and they would breathe in the fumes again, and the cycle will continue until like the surgery was over. Nowadays we have like a much better anesthetics. We have something called propofol, we have something called epidural, which things that can numb you from the waist down, that can numb your entire body, things that can literally put you into a medically induced coma while the doctors work on you. So this is like written in the Second World War. So back then, like the best options they had for anesthesia were either morphine or chloroform or laughing gas, nitrous oxide. All right. So let's take a look at this paragraph. She crouched close to the sleeping face of the young American. It was a piteously thin face, she thought. Piteously thin face means like you could look at it and you could like, oh my god, that dude is so thin. You felt pity for it. You didn't like, oh, that dude is skinny. Wow. No, that was like not an impressive kind of skinny. That was like a very, oh my goodness, if that dude doesn't eat, if I don't feed him, he's gonna die. That kind of skinny. She thought, and the lips were twisted. The man was suffering whether he knew it or not. Watching him, she wondered if the stories they heard sometimes of the sufferings of prisoners were true. They came like flickers of rumor told by word of mouth and always contradicted. In the newspapers, the reports were always that wherever the Japanese armies went, the people received them gladly, with cries of joy at their liberation. But sometimes she remembered such men as General Takima, who at home beat his wife cruelly, though no one mentioned it now that he had fought so victorious a battle in Manchuria. If a man like that could be so cruel to a woman in his power, would he not be cruel to one like this, for instance? Okay, so now we are seeing Hannah dealing with her thoughts and her ideas of what it means to be helping this man. Okay, so she says suffering of prisoners were true, like the stories that she had heard, rumors spry. But the government, like she says, like the propaganda and everything else in the newspapers report was always wherever the Japanese army went, the people received them gladly with cries of joy at their liberation. So this is like, once again, propaganda, straight up propaganda, which basically means propaganda. I've been using this word a lot. If you don't know that what that word means till now, it's basically like a disinformation campaign by a government or a power or something else, Basically somebody who has power over a group of people, when you put forth media to misinform them about the situation or to misinform them about what is happening around them and try to gaslight them, which means like provide them with false information and make them believe like that, oh, what they know is wrong and what the government is telling them is right. That's called propaganda. So here, like she says, like the newspaper reports and everything else says that people were waiting for the Japanese to come and they were cheering for them. They felt like they were being liberated, but which actually wasn't true. Because even if you think about it logically, like what I've told you about, like what they did to China, I've told you about what they did to all the other places as well. So if you think about that, like it really wouldn't be true for the Japanese people to be accepted as liberators or saviors. So once again, you can see like this is just propaganda. And then the next line is very important. Like this conversation, what she says is, General Takima, who at home beat his wife cruelly, though no one mentioned it now that he had fought so victorious a battle in Manchuria. If a man like that could be so cruel to a woman in his power, would he not be cruel to one like this, for instance? Now, once again, like she knows, like Hana is a woman, she knows, like everything that's going around, because like she's the woman of the house. She controls everything, and she knows everything that's going on. She's like Sadao's equal in this story. She's not inferior to Sadao. Sadao is not her boss. Sadao is not her master. They are both partners in their life. But then she talks about this guy called General Takima, who is a domestic abuser who beats his wife. But then like he wins a battle in Manchuria and suddenly nobody talks about it. Because why? Because he's a war hero. How can a war hero be doing this? How can somebody who is a hero to the nation be beating his wife? It just doesn't matter. But the truth is, like, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, and many people who are in places of power or in positions of power get used to abusing their power, and like it doesn't matter whether it's at home, whether it's at work, they will abuse that power. And that's why she's scared, because she thinks that a general who is in such a situation where he is overpowering, like where he has power over prisoners of wars and everything else. So if he can like beat his wife so cruelly that like the entire country knows, then what would he be doing to those prisoners? There's definitely going to be torture involved, and that's what Hannah is thinking, and that's what she's worried about. Okay. So she hoped anxiously that this young man had not been tortured. It was at this moment that she observed deep red scars on his neck, just under the ears. Those scars, she murmured, lifting her eyes to Siddha, but he did not answer. Okay, now once again, like these scars, they are mentioned quite a bit in the story. So it's up to us to infer what these scars mean. So I still don't know what these scars mean. They could mean that he was tried to hanged or something, or he was tortured or something. Something was going on. Like there was something put around his neck that left scars around his neck. So let's see if we find it out in the rest of the story. If not, then I'll have to find it out on my own. All right. So now we see Sadao is basically, trying to save his life. He's doing surgery. Now he says here, at this moment, he felt the tip of his instrument strike against something hard, dangerously near the kidney. All thought left him. He felt only the purest pleasure. He probed with his fingers, delicately familiar with every atom of this human body. His old American professor of anatomy had seen to that knowledge. Ignorance of the human body is the surgeon's cardinal sin, sirs, he had thundered at his classes year after year. To operate without as complete knowledge of the body as if we had made it anything less than that is murder. Alright, now this is the reason why like it takes so long to become a doctor. This is the reason why like the standards of study for doctors is much higher in places like America and stuff like that, is because they actually like give a crap about like what their patients are going through. I'm not saying like Indian surgeons are bad by any means, but like the amount of colleges we have saturating this country, the chances are like every surgeon that we produce is not going to be like as good as like maybe let's just look at it this way. Like the best way I can give you an analogy is, if I make 30 cakes a day, alright, chances are those 30 cakes are not going to be as good as the 3 cakes I make per day, right? If I make just 3 cakes per day, I'm going to put more time, more effort and everything else into them rather than doing 30 cakes a day. It's the same thing with like Indian doctors as well. Like you can train 30 doctors in like 5 years, you can train 30 surgeons in 5 years, but are you sure those 30 surgeons will be capable of saving every life they encounter, or would you rather just train like 10 surgeons in every year or something like that? Okay, so it's just that. It's just a matter of numbers. It's just a matter of, trying to understand how the human body works and being so, being understanding of the responsibility that is placed upon you. Like as a surgeon, as a doctor, like you have the responsibility of a human life in your hands, that is a huge responsibility. Because you are trying to save somebody's life, you're trying to make somebody's life better, you're trying to heal somebody. and that is as close to as a divine superpower as we can get in this world in our lifetime. A doctor and everybody else, all these people, doctors, scientists, researchers, anybody who is trying to make somebody's life better, anybody who's trying to save somebody's life, that's as close to as a superpower as we can get in this world. So that's the reason why the professor was telling them as well, you have to memorize every little thing about the human anatomy. You have to literally be able to split the body down to its atoms. You have to be that knowledgeable, and which is good advice for any surgeon. So if you're a science student listening to me right now, if you're a biology student, that's how good you have to be if you want to be a surgeon. That's how well you have to know the human body. All right. So Sadao is murmuring to his patient. He's telling him, like he's talking to him. He's saying that it's not quite at the kidney. My friend, he always called his patient, so now he did, forgetting that this was his enemy. So like I said, like there's a bedside manner as well. Like, if there's a doctor who's next to you and you're sick, and the doctor is like, all right, it's going to be fine. Just relax. We'll work through it. Anything that's wrong, we'll figure it out. Would you rather have that doctor at your bedside rather than somebody who's like, what the hell is wrong with you, idiot? Why aren't you getting better? Just drink the stupid medicine. What's wrong with you? Why haven't you taken anything? If you don't take medicine, I'm going to slap you. So there's a difference in like bedside manners between doctors, and that's the reason why some doctors are nicer than other doctors, and some of them, have patients that will always come back to thank them, and some of them have patients who will, always say, oh, that is a horrible doctor, don't go to him, he's just doing it for the money, he'll ruin you, and he'll ruin you this thing, and he'll ruin you that thing. You have heard it plenty in Halwani, alright? So, then quickly with the cleanest and most precise of incisions, the bullet was out, the man quivered, but he was still unconscious. Nevertheless, he muttered a few English words. Guts, he muttered chokingly, they got my guts. So this is like, he's trying to like, because chloroform doesn't really put you out, and Hannah is not an anesthesiologist, so she is trying to do her best, but at the same time, like, she has left him conscious enough that he can, murmur and like, say stupid things, that he's basically in a dream state. He's not fully conscious, but he's not fully unconscious as well. That state where you're dreaming, but you're dreaming, and you know that you're sleeping, but you still know that, like, okay, like whatever is happening around me, like, so it's that kind of a weird kind of a, half dreaming, half awake state that he is in right now. Okay, so guts, why is the significance of guts is because getting gut shot is one of the most painful ways you can die. If somebody shoots you in the stomach, it's gonna basically like, what happens is like all the acid in your stomach and everything else starts leaking out, and then all the waste and everything in your bowels, like your colon and everything, starts leaking out, and you're slowly dying of sepsis and poisoning, and your entire own stomach acid dissolving your internal organs. Not a quick death by any means. Like, it takes 30 to 45 minutes for somebody who you shoot in the stomach to die, and the pain they experience is probably the worst pain in this world. There have been stories by soldiers who have luckily been saved, and they have had to use, like, they've had to have their intestines removed, they've had to have like some of the parts of their organs removed just to save their lives when they were shot in the gut, and they can tell you, like, they can testify that it's one of the worst feelings in this world. This is why he's worried, because he's almost shot in the kidney and he almost lost his guts. Luckily he was shot in the back, so there's like a lot of muscle in your back compared to your front, your organs and everything, like, so your kidneys are towards your back and everything else is towards the center. So he didn't get hit in the guts, but he felt like he did. And of course, I mean, if you get shot almost in the kidney, like, getting shot almost in the kidney is just as good as getting shot in the kidney. The only difference is you're not going to die, but it's going to be painful as hell. So that's the reason why. The man sank again into silence so profound that Sadao took up his wrist, hating the touch of fish. Yes, there was still a pulse, so faint, so feeble, but enough. So Sadao has basically saved his life. He stopped the bleeding, removed the bullet, and he's now going to stitch him up. Okay. Yeah, no more anesthetic. He never paused. Made a small vial, and from it he filled a hypodermic and thrust into the patient's left arm. So after surgery, I think he's probably giving him some penicillin for his infection or something, some anti-infectant or something like that, so he doesn't die of, there's something called toxic shock syndrome, or there's something, what happens is, like, if you have a surgery and your immune system actually is very compromised when you're having a surgery, because your body is being cut open and invaded. So, like, either what happens is you catch an infection and you die after surgery, or there's something, your wounds get infected. So that's the reason why he's giving him this hypodermic after the surgery, is because it might be just antibiotics to avoid getting an infection. Alright, the young man woke so weak, his blue eyes so terrified when he perceived. So he's awake after the surgery is being done. Like I said, as soon as you remove the chloroform, people start regaining consciousness. So now we are dealing with the aftermath of the surgery. Sadao has saved this man's life. Now he's living in his house. Now we are seeing what happens, in a country where there is so fervent hatred and so much propaganda about this other culture. and they like this guy has just saved the life of an American soldier. So now he's basically committed blasphemy, or he's basically gone against every Japanese rule of that time. So first of all, he interacts with Hana, the prisoner, and he's like, "Oh, how come you speak English?" And she's like, "I was a long time in America." So she fed him, and she's feeding him from like and everything else. So third day after the operation, Sadao is trying to talk to the young man, and he's telling him that, "Do you want to die? Lie down, be still," and everything else. The young man is worried that he's gonna, give him up to the Japanese authorities, and he's going to be a prisoner of war again. And then what happens is like, everything else, there's question and answers. You are a prisoner of war. No, do not tell me anything. All right. So do not even tell you your name unless I ask it. So this is Sadao trying to be safe. This is something called plausible deniability, which is don't ask, don't tell. If Sadao, if he doesn't know his name, if like this dude actually doesn't give him any information, and then Sadao gets find out, like the government finds out that Sadao has been keeping him. Sadao has an actual answer, like he doesn't know. He can actually say his like whatever he denies is plausible because he doesn't really know. And even if like the Japanese military catches like the American prisoner of war, like he hasn't given any information to Sadao, and Sadao hasn't given any information to him. So no matter how much you torture both of them, you won't get any information out of them, and that is called plausible deniability. And that's like one of the main principles which special operations forces and everything else work on. Like it's called need to know basis. So if you don't need to know, you don't know. So you just follow the orders, and if you get caught, you can just say I was following orders. You don't know anything else. You can just like deny everything. So this is what is going on here. And then in the end of this page, like we can see like the servants are getting ready to leave. The servants are not supporting their masters anymore. Is because it's very simple. Like their masters are educated. They went to America. They have a certain idea of like what culture is and everything else. Sadao has his duty as a doctor. Hana loves this man and she trusts Sadao. That's why she's helping the American, and she's been in America as well. She has interacted with Americans. It's not that foreign of a concept to her. So this idea of the foreign devil or the white devil, which has been propagated and which has been propagandized by the Japanese, doesn't really affect Hana or Sadao, but like they still have to do their duty as Japanese citizens. So that's why they like behave in a certain way. But they also understand like deep down in their heart there is literally like not really, I wouldn't say like there is no hatred, but at the same time like they understand like what is happening. They understand the point of saving a life. They understand that what they're doing might be right or it might be wrong, but they still have to do it because there is no other choice. Their servants can't understand that, so they start leaving in this page. Okay, so here Sadao Yumi tells me the servants feel they cannot stay if we had this man here anymore. She tells me they're saying that you and I were so long in America that we have forgotten to think of our own country first. They think we like Americans now. This is such a huge thing. They think we like Americans in the middle of a war, Japanese war going on, like the biggest war in probably their country's history. So if they think like, oh, you like Americans, that means you don't want your country to win. That means you're not patriotic, which is the same thing that happens in our country as well. You've seen like countless millions of times. Oh, if you like Pakistan so much, why don't you go live in Pakistan? Which is like that doesn't really make sense. Like that's just so dumb. Oh, so just because I like America and I'm born in India, like I should go back to America. Like what the hell does that even mean? So it's just that like you can like other countries, you can like other people, you can like people who are your enemies as well. It doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, like the enemy is like our country and your country. Like you are not my enemy, I'm not your enemy. Like personally, we don't hate each other. Never done anything to you. You've never done anything to me. So the only reason we hate each other is because our country tells us that we have to hate each other, right? So that's the same thing here. So let's move on to the next page. So now this page is an interesting look into the Japanese culture and the relationship between the servants and their masters. So here the servants grew more watchful, the courtesy was as careful as ever, but their eyes were cold upon the pair to whom they were hired. Courtesy as careful as ever means like the Japanese have a very rigid social hierarchy. They have a very rigid rules of talking to people, social interactions. You have to add like honorifics after names. You have to address the elders a certain way, the youngers a certain way, your servants a different way. So there's like a very different, like very structured rules of interaction between people. So when it says here the courtesy was as careful as ever, that means because they are servants, so they have to be very polite to their masters. So they were being polite. But at the same time, their eyes were cold, so there was no warmth in their eyes, there was no warmth in their voice. They were not doing anything else than what was barely required of them, what was the minimum, like the politeness and doing the job. That was basically what they were doing. It is clear what a master ought to do, the old gardener said one morning. Now these are servants talking about themselves, so you can see like, and this is very interesting because like it shows like a little glimpse into the daily life of, a Japanese household. So there's an old gardener there whose job is to maintain the moss gardens and everything else. There's a cook there who bleeds a bird into the roots of a vine because it's considered good fertilizer. So you once again you get to see their culture in that time. You know what their beliefs were, what were the things they thought, how they behaved, how their daily lives went, their daily routines were. So this is just a little glimpse into it. You know. They did not try to hide what they said from the ears of Hannah as she stood arranging the day's flowers in the veranda nearby. She knew they spoke on purpose that she might hear once again. This whole passive aggressiveness thing, like you know, when you talk to somebody else and you want somebody else to listen, so you talk very loudly about them. I think they should be doing this because if they don't, then who am I to say? So it's that kind of thing. Indian households, Indian parents are exceptionally good at passive aggression. Like holy crap, like Indian parents are the best at being passive aggressive. Like they're very good at being aggressive, don't get me wrong. They can be very aggressive as well, but they're very, very good at being passive aggressive. Like it's incredible how good they are at being passive aggressive. Like, they can just have a conversation with a bloody water filter and somehow insult you in the process. Okay, so this is what's been happening here. They were right, she knew too, and most of her being, but there was another part of her which she herself could not understand. It was not sentimental liking of the prisoner. She had not come to think of him as a prisoner. She had not liked him even yesterday. Okay, so now Hannah is also dealing with the same thing. It's like, why can't I just give this man over? Why am I trying to save this life? Why am I feeding him? Why am I keeping him in my own house? Why am I losing my own servant because of this American prisoner? So she's also dealing through this, issue of not being able to understand that why are they saving their life. Like this whole controversial feeling of being a proud Japanese but also saving the life of an American. It's weighing heavily on Sadao and Hannah. So moving on, we see like that this conflict keeps growing between like Sadao, Hannah and their servants, this gap and this internal turmoil that both of them have been feeling. So as for Sadao, every day he examined the wound carefully. The last stitches had been pulled out this morning. The young man would in a fortnight be nearly as well as ever. So Sadao saved his life, healed him, gave him stitches, make sure that he is getting better and will be better as well. But then he starts writing a chief of police report. So basically he's starting to write a report that in case somebody comes and tries to arrest him, Sadao has an official report filed for him. So he writes it and then he opens the secret door and puts the unfinished report. So he doesn't even want to complete the report. He doesn't even want to begin this diplomatic process that might actually end up with this dude that he just saved being a prisoner of war again. Excuse me, like I said, ignore my talking sometimes. That happens, I get tired because entire video one take, I guess. Actually not one take, like this is multiple takes, I'm sorry. On the 7th day after that, two things happened. In the morning, the servants left together. So the servants have left they've left the house completely. They don't want to be associated. They don't want to be branded traitors by association with these doctors, right? Even the nurse is left and she says, like, if the baby misses me too much tonight, send for me. I'm going to my own house, where it is. Thank you, Hannah said, smiling, but she told herself she would not send for Yumi, however the baby cried. So Hannah is a proud woman. She understands, like, okay, Yumi, you want to leave the house? Sure, but I'm not going to call you no matter how much the baby cries because I can take care of my own baby. So Hannah is a proud woman and she's an independent woman, so she knows what she's capable of doing. She's very proud and she's very, I wouldn't say arrogant, but I would say she's very capable in her abilities. She has good belief in herself. So she made the breakfast, Sadao helped with the children. Why is it we cannot see clearly what we ought to do? She asked him. Even the servants see more clearly than us. Why are we different from other Japanese? So once again, Sadao and Hannah are dealing with this fact, like, why are they saving? Why are they doing so much for this American? What is wrong with them? Can't they be like other Japanese people and just have blind hatred in their heart towards the Americans? Why can't they be like everybody else? So that's what the commotion here is. That's what the conflict here between Sadao and Hannah is, okay? Sadao did not answer, but a little later he went into the room where the prisoner was and said brusquely. Brusquely means said roughly. Today you may get up on your feet. I want you to stay up only 5 minutes at a time. Tomorrow you may try twice as long. It would be well. You get back your strength as quickly as possible. Alright? So, once again, the boy says, I feel I ought to thank you, doctor, for having saved my life. Don't thank me too early, Sadao said coldly. Coldly because he doesn't want to be warm towards this guy. I hope you guys understand. Sadao doesn't want this. He doesn't understand why it's happening. Where is this humanity inside him coming from? He doesn't understand, this is his enemy. He should be, murdered him. He should have left him in the sea. He should have never have, picked him up even in the first place. Now, the cook makes a comment previously, the doctor is so proud of his skill at saving lives that he doesn't care what life he saves. Which I think is, a very simpleton's way of looking at it, because that is just a servant, that is just a cook. She doesn't understand, the amount of effort and study it goes into becoming a doctor. That's what she says. But as a doctor, like I said, like you take an oath that you do not let any harm come to any human being, whether it be an enemy, especially in the cases of war. So if you read about medics and doctors who were attached to war and everywhere, they treated both sides. And in a war, like you're not allowed to shoot medics. Medics are not allowed to carry weapons, and you're not allowed to shoot a medic. Like it doesn't matter, like if you're on the opposite side, if you're on the losing side or the winning side. If there is a medic on the field, nobody shoots the medic. Like that's an unspoken rule in a war. Like if there's somebody trying to save somebody's life, because if you shoot a medic, chances are the next time you get shot, the medic is not going to save you. Because, like I said, medics on the battlefield don't discriminate between enemies and their own soldiers. And which is where, like, Sadao and Hana come in, like, because they are also, like, they lived in America and they're both, like, students everywhere. They studied in the same college, basically. Sadao is a doctor as well, and he has taken the same oath as well. So, this is the reason why. Once again, this is one of the prime examples, prime conflicts in the story. It is because, like, Sadao and Hana's, conflict between trying to be Japanese and trying to be good human beings. Like there's those two aren't like mutually exclusive. Those two aren't overlapping in their world. So if they try to be a good Japanese citizen, they would have let this man die. But if they try to save this man, which is what humanity tells you to do, they will not be considered good Japanese citizens, which is what we see when their servants leave them completely. Alright, in the afternoon, the second thing happened. Hana working hard on unaccustomed labor, so she's unaccustomed to working throughout the entire house because she's used to having servants. She's a surgeon's wife, come on, man. Saw a messenger come to the door in official uniform. Her hands went weak and she could not draw her breath. The servant must have already told. She ran to Sadao, gasping, unable to utter a word. Alright. So there is a messenger here now. Hana is frightened because she thinks like the servants have already told like the officials that these guys have an American in their house. But then we later find out that no, this is just like the general that Sadao is treating. The reason why he wasn't sent to the war, the general is in pain and he has called for Sadao and Sadao has been summoned and he has to go. Okay, so that's it. And then we move on. Now, on the next page, we see, I thought they had come to arrest you, she said. He gazed down into her anxious eyes. I must get rid of this man for your sake, he said in distress. Somehow I must get rid of him. So now Hana almost had a panic attack just by watching that messenger. She thought they were all going to die. And now Sadao has seen like his wife is having panic attacks. His wife is having problems, living her normal life. She's having problems relaxing and understanding, the situation or dealing with the situation, I would rather say. And so he says, like, I have to get rid of this prisoner. Like, I can't watch my wife go through this. I can't put my family through this. The servants leaving, my wife doing the housework, then having panic attacks. Like I said, Sadao is a very good man at heart. Like, no matter what conflict he has inside himself, no matter what turmoil is in his soul, Sadao is a good man. So let's say Sadao goes to see the general. This is in the next section. So now this is where Sadao meets the general and they have their conversation. So of course the general said weakly, I understand fully, but that is because I once took a degree in Princeton. So few Japanese have. So once again, he understands. Yes. So this is like an entire conversation. So I'll just, I won't read the entire thing. You can read this on your own. I'll just point out some of the important things in this. Okay, you cannot be arrested, the general said, closing his eyes. Suppose you were condemned to death and the next day I had to have my operation. So here he's trying to tell Sadao that, like, you can't be arrested. Like, we'll kill the American or we'll take him prisoner, but we can't kill you because you're an important part of this operation that we need you here. I need you to save my life. Okay, and there are other surgeons, Excellency Sadao suggested, none I trust. The best ones have been trained by Germans and would consider the operation successful even if I died. So once again, you can see the amount of paranoia these people live in. Like if a German trained surgeon is operating on a Japanese general, chances are like he might let him die just because like he's from Japan. All right. Okay, so that's why he's saying like, they would consider the operation successful even if I died. I do not care for their point of view. It seems a pity that we cannot better combine the German ruthlessness with the American sentimentality. Now, what is Germany famous for? It's famous for engineering, its cars, it's famous for being methodical. So that's what he means. German ruthlessness and American sentimentality is because Americans are known for being very emotional, wearing their hearts on their sleeves. They're known to be very friendly, open with their emotions, very open with everybody else. And that's what he means, we cannot better combine German ruthlessness with the American sentimentality. This is what it basically means. So then he explains, then you could turn your prisoner over to the execution, yet I could be sure you would not murder me while I was unconscious. The general laughed. He had an unusual sense of humor. Okay, so now this is like the general trying to make a joke out of a situation, so he's got very dark humor as well. As a Japanese, could you not combine these two foreign elements? Sadao smiled. I would not quite sure, but for your sake, I would be willing to try, Excellency. The general shook his head. I had rather not be the test case, he said. He felt suddenly weak and overwhelmed with the cares of his life as an official in times such as these when repeated victory brought great responsibilities. all over the South Pacific. It is very unfortunate that this man should have washed up on your doorstep, he said irritably. Alright? I feel it so myself, so that was gently. Now I've switched over to the next page. I'm not going to give a cut here, so I'm at page 41 by the way. It would be best he could be killed quietly, not by you, but by someone who does not know him. I have my own private assassins. Suppose I send two of them to your house tonight, or better, any night. You need know nothing about it. It is now warm. What would be more natural than that you leave the outer partition of the white man's room open to the garden while he sleeps? So now once again, this is a conspiracy. Now the general is giving Sadao an out, like this Sadao's consciousness can be clean. He is not the one pulling the trigger. He's not the one doing the killing. He's not the one even asking for him to be killed. He's the one who is just agreeing with the general. The general said, I have assassins who can kill this man. Sadao is saying, well, that would be very natural. In fact, so it is left open every night. Okay. Good, the general said, yawning. They are very capable assassins. They make no noise. They know the trick of inward bleeding. If you like, I can even have them revive the body. So inward bleeding, I don't know. This is an urban legend which basically stated like they had assassins back in the olden days who could stab you in such a way, or who could do like damage to you in such a way that your body bled inwardly. Like there was only internal bleeding. It wouldn't bleed outside, so you wouldn't be able to tell that somebody had been murdered or somebody had been assassinated. Now, I don't know how true that is. I don't know what's like the actual historical background behind it. So if I find it out, I'll share it with you guys as well. Otherwise, like this is basically it. Okay, so he left the general's presence and then went home thinking over the plan. In this way, the whole thing would be taken out of his hands. He would tell Hana nothing, since she would be timid at the idea of assassins in the house. And yet certainly such persons was essential in an absolute state such as Japan was. How else could rulers deal with those who opposed them? Once again, this shows you like what kind of situation you are in. This shows you what kind of society that Japan was at that time, where rulers had private assassins who could, covertly kill anybody who didn't agree with them. Okay, so once he opened the door to his young man out of bed, preparing to go into the garden. Who gave you permission to leave your room? I'm not used to waiting for permission, Tom said gaily. Gosh, I feel pretty good again, but will the muscles on this side always feel quite stiff? Is it so? Sadao inquired, surprised. He forgot all else. Now I thought I had provided again that. So you can see Sadao is such a passionate man about his profession. He's so good at being a doctor that as soon as he hears there's something wrong with his patient, he just automatically forgets everything. This conversation about assassins, conversations about killing him, and then he just says, oh, I had provided against. So he lifts the man's shirt and tries to gaze at the stitches and everything else. Okay. So if exercise, massage may do it, if exercise does not, it won't bother me much, the young man said. Say, doctor, I've got something I want to say to you. If I hadn't met a Jap like you, well, I wouldn't be alive today, I know that. Sure, I know that, Tom went on warmly, his big thin hands gripping a chair, were white at the knuckles. I guess if all the Japs were like you, there wouldn't have been a war. Perhaps, Sadao said with difficulty. Now I think you had better go back to bed. He held the boy back into bed and then bowed. Good night, he said. So Sadao knows, he's talking, he's saying, Tom is thanking him, oh, if every Japanese person went like you, we wouldn't have a war. But Tom doesn't realize that, Sadao has just had a conversation about sending assassins to his room at night and killing him in his sleep, which is why Sadao is so uncomfortable. So he sleeps badly that night, time and time again. He's being paranoid, he's being scared. Like I said, he's a good man who is in a bad situation, and even though he has agreed to having assassins inside his house, he doesn't support it. He's still paranoid. He's still scared, So the next morning, he made an excuse to go first into the guest room. If the American were gone, he then could simply tell Hana that the general had directed. But when he opened the door, American was still alive. What shall we do with him? Hana whispered her old refrain. So Hana, old refrain means Hana is probably that's what she's been saying, since this dude has been with them. Now it has been a long time since this American has been there. As you can see, stitches take a long time to heal. So if his stitches have healed, that means he's been there at least for a month. So Hana has been there saying this whole thing over and over again. What shall we do with him? What shall we do with him? That's why it says whispered her old refrain. So Sadao shook his head once again. Once again he says, I must decide in a day or two. Okay, so then once again he keeps waiting for these assassins to come over, but they never come. They never do. All right. So that is it. So let's move on to the next page, page 43. So this is it. Sadao and Hana, they keep waiting for the assassins to show up, but the assassins never do. Okay, and they are now feeling very stressed, and Sadao now tells him you're strong enough, now you can escape, so I'll provide you with a boat. There's an island on the coast which you can hide, and then you can find a Korean fishing boat that passes, which you can flag down, and you will catch it right, and you can go to any American warship, and once you get off, you'll be free again. Okay, it is not hidden that you are here. So the young man nodded in perfect comprehension. Okay, he said simply. Alright, so thou did not see him again until evening. As soon as it was dark, he had dragged the stout boat down to the shore, and in it he put food and bottled water that he had bought secretly during the day, as well as 2 quilts he had bought at a pawn shop. Okay, the boat he tied to a post in the water, for the tide was high. There was no moon. He worked without a flashlight. 1 second. So Sadao did not see him again until the evening. As soon as it was dark, he had dragged the stout boat down to the shore. So he's trying to make sure that the American escapes properly. Now you can see, Sadao tried everything. He saved his life. He tried to tell the general. He tried to tell the report to the police chief. He even got assassins. So he's done everything like in his power to try to be a good Japanese. But in the end, nothing works. And this shows being human. The power of humanity is stronger than anything else. So Sadao finally figures it out. He's like, okay, I'm gonna help this dude escape, he has to get out. Gives him a boat and everything else. When he came to the house, he entered as though he was just back from his work, so Hana knew nothing. Yumi was here today, she said, as she served his supper. Yumi cried over the baby, she misses him, so the servants will come back as soon as the foreigner is gone. Once again, he knows, the servants will not leave their house because they've been there for generations, this whole Japanese sense of loyalty you have towards your employers will not let them stay away for long. Okay, I realize you're saving my life again. Not at all. It is only inconvenient to have you here any longer. He had hesitated a good deal about giving the man a flashlight. So once again, Sadao is trying to save his life. You can see through this entire story, the conflict is Sadao and his internal monologue. So this is the most important thing. So we'll discuss this in the online lecture. All the philosophical leanings of Sadao and everything else. Okay, so he was dressed now in the Japanese clothes which Sadao had given him at the last moment. Sadao wrapped a black cloth about his blonde head. Now, the young American without a word shook Sadao's hand warmly, then walked quite well across the floor, down the step into the darkness of the garden. Okay, and that night he slept. You say the man escaped, the general asked faintly. He had been operated upon a week before, an emergency operation to which Sadao had been called in the night. Okay, so for 12 hours, Sadao operated on this general, then the old man had begun to breathe deeply again and to demand food. Sadao had not been able to ask about the assassin. So he saves the general's lives as well. So this is, it shows you Sadao is an excellent surgeon. He's a brilliant, brilliant surgeon. 12 hours of surgery in Second World War is an incredible feat nonetheless. 12 hours of surgery is not a bloody playground. You can understand. Okay. The servants had returned. Yumi had cleaned the guest room thoroughly and burned sulfur in it to get the white man smell out of it once again. They show, the white man smell, so you can see the kind of superstition and everything, the white man smell. Yes, Excellency, Sadao now said. He might cough, signifying that he had not said all he might have said, but was unwilling to disturb the general further. But the old man opened his eyes suddenly. The prisoner, he said with some energy. Did I not promise you I would kill him for you? Okay. You did, Excellency, said Sadao. Well, the old man said in a tone of amazement. So I did, but you see, I was suffering a good deal. The truth is, I thought of nothing but myself. In short, I forgot my promise to you. I wondered, Your Excellency, Sadao murmured. It was certainly very careless of me, the general said, but you understand it was not a lack of patriotism or dereliction of duty. So now the general is worried because the general realized he promised Sadao that he's going to kill this American for him, and then he forgot about it, and now the American has escaped, and so if there is an investigation and there's a query, so there is somebody higher than the general who's the commander, right? So if the commander figures out there's a American prisoner of war who washed over and the general didn't have him killed, so Sadao will get away. It's not Sadao's fault that the prisoner escaped, it's the general's fault who didn't get him killed. So now Sadao realized somehow out of all of this in this situation, now he is the one with the power over the general. Somehow all he did, all the goodness in his heart is being rewarded by him, being in such a position where all his life is going back to normal, everything is happy again, and he saved a life. He didn't betray his oath again. So we see. Okay. He remembered his old teacher of anatomy who had been so insistent on mercy with the knife. Then he remembered the face of his fat and slatternly means rough landlady. So once again he goes, strange, I wonder why I could not kill him. Okay, now I've explained the entire chapter. I believe I've explained it properly. I don't know if I have. You guys have to tell me if I haven't. So make notes and everything else. And I'll try to find resources. I'll try to put them in the video as well. And yeah, this is it basically. This is the end of the story. So what do we learn from this? We learn that humanity is bigger than any war. Animosity and everything else is just in our heads. Whatever the culture around us teaches, we just usually believe it. There is literally no such thing as the enemy in this entire world because we're all humans. It doesn't matter if somebody is a sworn enemy of yours. People say, oh, he's my nemesis. Oh, this country is our sworn enemy. It's they are people too, buddy. Like, I'm not a huge believer in war. Like, I'm a military history nerd. Of course, I am. Like, I study warfare. I love guns. I love military tactics and all of that stuff. But like, it's just a theoretical like thing, you know. Like, nobody wants a war. Like, I don't want a war anyway. Like, I understand. Like, once you study war so much, that's when you realize you don't want a war. If you don't study war, that's when you realize that's because all these people, like I talk to, like, you know, on the nationalistic thing that's been going on in the social media in the past few years, which is what India is becoming now, like an ultra nationalist Hindu state. I wouldn't say an ultra nationalist in the state as of now, because like the COVID pandemic put quite a halt on the right wing progress and everything else. But right now, like even conversations online are just devolving into, you know, we should fight them, we should fight this, India should go to war, India should fight them. Like, come on, man, do you have any idea how terrible a war is? And which is why I wanted to have this conversation with you guys, which is why it took so long for this chapter, is because I had to set everything up and all these important conversations that we needed to have. So, watch this entire video, make notes of anything I might have missed out on, anything that I might not have covered, any explanation that you want during the text. Go through the book 20, 30 times, go through this story quite a lot. And if you find anything that you don't understand, as usual, reach out to me and we'll do this in the online lecture as well. So, the question and answers, I'm not really going to address right now. We'll do this in the online lecture and then I'll ask you guys to do it yourself. Or I'll provide you a PDF if I'm feeling generous and if I have time. So anyways, I hope you guys had fun. This has been like the longest lecture series I've done in my life, and this is going to be like the longest video I think I've made. I don't know if this is going to be the longest video I've made for you guys, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty long. Anyway, so I hope you guys don't get bored, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys had fun, and I'll see you guys in the online lecture. So take care.